Hi there, welcome. In today's video, I am going to be discussing the topic of Zig Zag Iris Fibers. And for today, I'm going to be drawing primarily upon the work of Dorothy Hall, and as well I'm going to tie in one of Fred Sharon's iris texture types. And you can see up here in the center the drawing, and this is taken from Fred Sharon's Iridology textbook, and it is representing the type she refers to as the zigzag fiber impatient frustration type. And so she's tying in the zigzag fiber with a few other iris features and creating an iris type. And I'm also going to be, when we take a closer look at this, clarifying my thoughts on iris typing. And so what you can see on the screen are the eyes that we're going to look at, and I'm just going to show you the zigzagging, which you can already probably note, but we'll magnify each eye just a little bit, and I will trace out the zig and the zag that I am seeing. And we're also going to find that the zigzag iris fibers can lend themselves to crypts. And you may know that crypts are a form of lacuna, often smaller and darker, and can be indicating some serious level of distress in an area that they form in. And you can also see on the screen that we do not today have a true brown iris. So that is letting us know that the true brown iris of the velvet texture does not develop these zigzag iris fibers. And you can see the zigzag iris fibers, however, in a brown eye. So a person that has a brown colored eye that's not of the velvet texture. And so in iridology, we don't refer to that as a true brown iris, even though it is a brown eye. These people can also develop the crypts. So just to start, I'm going to read a little bit from Dorothy Hall's Iridology book. And she says about zigzag fibers: many people of all structural types can show the sharp angles of zigzagged fiber structure. Certainly they are less likely to be found in a silk iris than in any other type, because they indicate a reservoir of unused energy. If you are a silk type, energy is used and used and used again. And I have noticed this, that the zigzag fibers, I have not seen them in any true silk iris type. They are mostly in the still strong. So we're looking at a fairly strong constitution when we see these zigzag fibers, because in a more open weave constitution, you're going to see more open lacuna. Okay. And she goes on to say, the less hardy silk linens, though still remarkably strong, can show an odd fiber or two with this pattern if their energy is frustrated and unused. A silk linen confined to a desk or a car or a job where physical mobility is severely limited may begin to show zigzag frustration of his normal energy flow rate. The result can look like laziness if he then sits in front of TV all the evening, biting his fingernails, when what he needs is physical activity. So zigzag fibers equal frustration of available energy flow. And we'll start to see when I get to Fred Sharon's iris type where she is deriving her concept of this iris type on, I believe, primarily on her own work, but as well heavily on the work of Dorothy Hall's and her experience. And so frustration is kind of a key word when you have a lot of energy and you're not able to use it. So if you have these zigzag iris fibers, that's going to be a primary indication that you need to exercise. And some of us just need to exercise more to feel normal, right? And so it can be a lack of its energy or its creativity that you're not able to express. And so she goes on to say, even the more open weave irises of linen and Hessian types can show this frustration pattern. Fibers arranged like open zips all around the iris clock. Ask such a person a few leading questions. Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel like you should be doing something more, something different? Do you feel like you'd like to run and jump up and down and yell a bit? When the answer is a clenched fist and a tight jaw, or a verbal release of pent-up energy, you're on the right track. You can see Dorothy Hall has this like really sweet, funny personality. However, the pattern of crimped fibers may stay in the iris long after any immediate release of energy. It can take some time to reestablish a balance, since such people tend to repeat or endure similar circumstances again and again. So I want to note here, because she says that the pattern can stay in the iris, it can come and go. And we're going to see that like with Freidescheron's iris type here, that the pupil is a little bit enlarged or dilated, and that can cause the crimping or the zigzagging of the iris fibers. And so you can see it, sometimes it will show up in photos where the light, when you're taking iris photos, has caused the pupil to dilate, and then you may not see it in all of the photos depending on the size of the pupil. And then some people's pupils, everyone's of course, but some are more prone to pupil dilation, and that really is when the pupil is dilated, it can indicate stress in the sympathetic nervous system, which is, as we know, the part of the nervous system that deals with fight or flight. All right, so they can come and go, but if it's a constant or a common thing for a person to have their iris fibers going into this zigzag pattern, it can stay locked in, and that's when it can create the crypts. So I'm going to go on and read the last paragraph or two that she has on zigzag fibers, and she says, I often find crimped fibers in irises of heavy marijuana smokers, particularly those folk who have smoked the drug too often, for 12 months or even several years, as well as showing certain disturbances in autonomic function. Such an iris can indicate restriction of potential energy flow. A, quote, Lotus-Eater can be the result. Inhibition of drive and non-recognition of real energy capabilities in a pleasant, illusory haze of well-being. So here I'd like to pause again and just say, you know, we're not sure, does the marijuana itself contribute, or the lotus eating contribute to the crimped fibers, or are people that have a lot of energy and a lot of creativity that aren't expressing it for whatever reason? It could be physical limitations, it could be, you know, environmental limitations, it could be emotional limitations. Oftentimes they will, and if they're not exercising, getting their energy out, if they're not able to, especially, then oftentimes this kind of person will turn to, you know, some kind of self-medication in a way of just checking out. And more often than not, that is through marijuana. And I suppose the Lotus-Eaters of the past could really come into play in this type of personality as well. So, you know, we're not quite sure. It could be different in every case where the fibers are developing from. I sort of tend to think that it starts within the nervous system. It starts with that frustration, and then I would also say that the habit of smoking marijuana, especially if you do it a lot and for years, might contribute because it really does affect the nervous system. And so it's going to add on to that effect. And then lastly, she says, if you assess a person as quiet and slightly below average in energy, then find this zigzag fiber structure in the iris. It can help to point out to him gently that he is not getting the best from himself, not using his structural strength, and that he would feel and be much healthier if he overcame this inhibition of his real drive. And I think that's probably the main point there. Inhibition of real drive can equal frustration. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to go through each of these eyes briefly. If you haven't already been able to, depending on your screen size, see these zigzag fibers. So in this blue eye here, we have these zigzag fibers in this area, not creating any crypts in this area, more of an area of like an open field weakness, I would say. Same as in this area, and just a few throughout the iris. I would say that because the pupil doesn't seem to be dilated, that this may be a normal feature of this person's iris. We can see some more in this area, in here, and in here. Maybe a slight little opening in this area created by the zigzag fibers. And then also I'd like to note that we do have this red fringe around the iris, which can sometimes or often indicate inflammation, of course, and that can be sometimes tied into consumption of weed or alcohol, or just other toxicity coming in from the environment. Okay, and then let's look at this one here, and this one does have a few more examples of, in this area here, you can see this beginning of a formation of a crypt, and I would even say that it is one. It doesn't look to be too serious in nature, but throughout this iris there are zigzags. And I would say this is probably more of a cotton type of iris texture, and the fibers are a little bit more loosely woven. Okay, and then in this eye we have inflammation. You can see in the white of the fibers, and definitely a lot of zigzag fibers, although we're not really seeing any crypts in this eye. Maybe the beginning of one in this area here, something here, and then we do have more of an open weave created typical lacuna. So again, definitely not a silk type, more like a, you know, I mean, every fabric has a certain amount of thread count as well, so this could be considered a low a low thread count cotton, or it could even certainly be considered a linen. Okay, so just these crimps, these zigzags throughout. Here we go. All right, and let's let's look at this last blue eye. We have interesting little diamond. I would not call these crypts or lacuna, but they're iris fibers that are creating different shapes, but they're not black inside or, you know, completely open. But I do see them sort of extending from some zigzag fibers in here. And then of course we have in here and just all throughout. And we do have something of a crypt in this area. The connection to the zigzag fibers isn't super obvious, but it is there. And definitely in here. All right, so you're going to see differing levels of crimping and zigzagging, and that is going to show you what level of frustration or unused energy or stress in the nervous system this person is experiencing. And you can see, especially in this drawing from Frederick book, we have some wavy fibers, and then in here you can see a few crypts that are created as a result of the zigzag fibers. So here and then right here. Okay, so while we're here, I did do a short video, and I basically just read out of Frederick's book her description of her zigzag fiber impatient frustration type, and we have a lot up in here as well. And I want to clarify that. And so what she did is she took at least 3 prominent features that you may see in an iris. She talked about the pupil size being dilated, and she talked about the zigzag fibers. And there isn't a certain trait that does come along with these zigzag fibers that she describes, and you don't really pick it up from Dorothy Hall's work, but she does talk about the difficulty or even the inability of people to say no. So that is one of the personality traits that you may see in this iris fiber type. So maybe not just alone in the zigzagging, but if you see iris zigzags along with the pupil, along with the nerve rings, you may see these traits in one. But I think, so for me, I find iris typing very interesting, but I'd rather get down to the bottom of why and how she's coming to the conclusion that she's coming to. And so we're looking at a different combination of traits found in the iris, and then she sums that up and describes this iris type. And she basically says that the pupil can be large because of nervous weakness, exhaustion, medications, trauma, or shock. And zigzag iris fibers accompany behaviors of impatience and frustration, restriction of positive energy flow, and diminished or exhausted energy. And then she does mention that difficult behavior patterns are repeated as it becomes harder to make decisions, and they get stuck and cannot say no, even though they know they will suffer if they say yes. So she does mention that strengthening of the nervous system and adrenal glands is paramount. And so we're seeing here, because of the size of the pupil, that the nervous system and especially the adrenals are being highlighted in this iris type. So will you see those traits in every single eye, that you see a large pupil and nerve rings and zigzag fibers? I don't think so. And that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to completely embrace the typing of irises. I think they're interesting. Like I said, I prefer to just sort of contemplate how they're arriving at the iris type. And iris typing has been done. She sort of followed some of the models. She followed the models of Dorothy Hall's texture typing. And then she also, in her book, she explains the German Iridology iris typing, and then she has created her own. And so I think with texture typing, you know, you're looking at different silks and cottons and these kinds of things. That is super relevant and it's interesting, and it is certainly going to indicate some level of a personality or psycho-spiritual behaviors or influences for that person. But it's really not always going to be accurate or even fair to assume that someone with these 3 different features is going to go into one category. And I do think that there can be some truth to it. I really prefer looking at the iris fibers themselves and Dorothy Hall's work on the Zig Zag Fibers and going from there. And I do very much respect Iridolog's work on her texture types and her iris types. But there's just so much else that can occur in an iris, and I'm sure that she would probably say the same thing if she was asked. Such as different lacuna and different crypts and different signs of weakness and where they are appearing. So the organs and glands and the relationships that they make to each other are of prime importance in the overall picture, not only of the psycho-spiritual aspects of iridology, which is what I'm speaking to right now, but really, of course, the physical aspects. So that is my take on iris types, and I think I've mentioned this before, and I'll probably mention it again. I'll probably do a few more videos on more iris types because I do think it's interesting. And so, but that should cover it for Zig Zag Fibers, and I hope you enjoy. If you have any feedback for me, if you have any Zig Zag Fibers, do let us know. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.